November, 1942. Copenhagen is wrapped in fog so thick it swallows sound. The cobblestones glisten with damp, reflecting the weak glow of blackout street lamps. A German officer turns a corner, boots echoing softly against the empty street. He never senses the presence behind him. There is no shout, no warning, no explosion. One instant he is alive, breathing, walking, thinking about tomorrow. The next, he collapses forward, lifeless, his body striking stone. No one nearby reacts. No one looks up. No one runs. 3 streets away, the man who killed him has already blended into the city. The weapon is hidden beneath his coat sleeve. It doesn't look like a gun. It doesn't even look finished. No polished steel. No recognizable silhouette. Just a dull metal tube, something that could easily be mistaken for scrap pulled from a workshop floor. This crude-looking object was one of the most lethal tools of the Second World War. It was called the well rod. And it was never meant to fight a war loudly. A war that couldn't be fought openly. By 1941, Britain was fighting a war it could not win through conventional means alone. Most of Europe had fallen. German forces occupied cities from Paris to Oslo, from Brussels to Warsaw. Armies had been defeated, but resistance had not been erased. Winston Churchill understood this. His answer was not another army, but something far less visible. He ordered the creation of an organization with a singular, ruthless purpose, to disrupt, sabotage, and destabilize the enemy from within. It was given a deliberately vague name, the Special Operations Executive, or SOE. Its mission was bluntly stated, set Europe ablaze. SOE agents were sent behind enemy lines. They trained resistance cells. They destroyed railways, factories, power stations. They kidnapped or eliminated collaborators. But as operations expanded, a deadly problem emerged. There was no reliable way to kill someone silently. The problem with quiet killing. Assassination in occupied territory is not like the movies. It is close, personal, unforgiving. A mistake doesn't just mean failure. It means torture, exposure of networks, and mass executions in retaliation. SOE agents had options, but none were ideal. Knives demanded proximity and strength. One slip meant a struggle, and struggles make noise. Garrots required perfect positioning and time, luxuries rarely available. Poison could take hours or days, often failing entirely. And firearms? Firearms were loud. Even suppressed weapons of the era were only less loud, not truly quiet. A suppressed Sten submachine gun still produced sound levels comparable to industrial machinery. Suppressed pistols reduced the sharp crack of gunfire, but anyone nearby would still recognize the sound instantly. In an occupied city, that recognition could bring soldiers in seconds. What SOE needed wasn't a quieter gun. They needed a gun that almost didn't sound like a gun at all. Designing silence from the ground up. The task was assigned to a small, secretive facility north of London, Station 9, part of the Inter-Service Research Bureau. The team included engineers, machinists, and weapons specialists, led by Major Hugh Reeves. They didn't approach the challenge as traditional gun designers. Instead, they treated gunfire as an acoustic problem. Every gunshot, they realized, is made up of 3 distinct noises. The explosion of propellant gases escaping the muzzle, the sonic crack of a bullet traveling faster than sound, the mechanical noise of the weapon itself cycling. To achieve near-total silence, all 3 had to be eliminated. No existing firearm managed that. So they built something entirely new. Subsonic death. The first issue was the bullet itself. Standard 9mm ammunition travels faster than sound. Even if the muzzle blast is suppressed, the bullet creates a sharp crack as it cuts through the air. That noise cannot be silenced. The solution was deceptively simple. Slow the bullet down. Engineers reduced the powder charge so the round left the barrel at subsonic speed, fast enough to kill, slow enough to avoid the sonic crack. It still used a 9mm projectile, ensuring lethality at close range, but without the telltale sound. This alone dramatically reduced the weapon's audible signature. But the gun still had moving parts. Removing the sound of machinery. Semi-automatic pistols make noise even when suppressed. Slides snap backward. Springs compress. Empty casings strike metal surfaces. So the well rod eliminated semi-automatic function entirely. Instead, it used a manually operated bolt. After firing, the shooter rotated and pulled a knurled knob at the rear to eject the spent casing and chamber the next round. It was slow. It was deliberate. And it was almost silent. There was no clatter. No mechanical slap. Just stillness. Speed didn't matter. The well rod wasn't built for firefights. It was built for moments where only one shot was needed. The suppressor that was the gun. The final challenge, the most difficult, was controlling the propellant gases. In a normal firearm, gases escape violently when the bullet exits the barrel. That sudden release is what creates the familiar bang. The well rod's designers took an extreme approach. They didn't attach a suppressor. They built the entire weapon around one. Nearly 2/3 of the well rod's length consisted of expansion chambers and baffles. When the gun fired, gases were trapped, redirected, cooled, and slowed as they passed through this internal maze. Rubber wipes sealed around the bullet as it passed, preventing pressure from escaping all at once. By the time the gases reached open air, they were no longer explosive. They simply leaked out. The result was astonishing. A gun that didn't sound like a gun. An unsuppressed pistol produces sound levels around 160 decibels, enough to cause immediate hearing damage. Even early suppressed pistols hovered well above 110 decibels. The well rod produced approximately 73 decibels. That's roughly the sound of a car door closing. At a short distance, it could blend into background noise, footsteps, a cough, a chair scraping against stone. In busy environments, the shot might not be noticed at all. Victims often collapsed before anyone realized something had happened. Form follows function. Visually, the well rod was almost comically plain. It measured about 14 inches long. The grip was a simple cylindrical tube wrapped in rubber. Inside it sat a 6-round magazine. Later versions increased capacity slightly. There was no trigger guard. The sights were minimal. The barrel protruded like an unremarkable length of pipe. This wasn't a weapon meant to inspire confidence. It was meant to disappear, under a coat, in a bag, against a thigh. Its effective range was short, around 20 meters, but in practice, much closer. This was a weapon for hallways, stairwells, parked cars, and crowded rooms. At that distance, accuracy was irrelevant. Silence was everything. Into occupied Europe. Production began quietly in late 1942. Exact numbers remain unknown. Records were deliberately obscured. Serial numbers were scattered. Documentation was destroyed. Estimates range from a few thousand to over 10,000 units. They were distributed through clandestine supply drops, parachuted into forests, fields, and remote villages. Resistance fighters learned how to use them quickly. There was little to learn. Aim. Fire. Leave. In France, resistance groups used the well rod for targeted eliminations. German officers known for brutality stopped appearing at morning briefings. Collaborators vanished after meetings. One account describes an assassination in a busy cafe. A man slumped forward at his table. Patrons assumed he had fainted or suffered a medical emergency. The killer exited calmly. No one heard a thing. The psychological effect. The physical damage inflicted by the well rod was significant. The psychological damage was devastating. German forces were trained to react to noise. Gunfire triggered alarms, cordons, sweeps. Silence offered no warning. Officers began to understand that a quiet room could be more dangerous than a loud one. Informants grew nervous. Collaboration became riskier. The absence of sound no longer meant safety. In Norway, SOE teams used the well rod during sabotage missions. Guards could be removed without alerting nearby patrols. Those extra seconds, those moments of confusion, often meant escape instead of capture. In Denmark, resistance fighters used the weapon in daylight operations, something unthinkable with conventional firearms. Silence created opportunity. How it compared to Allied and Axis weapons. Other nations experimented with suppressed firearms, but none matched the well rod's combination of quiet and lethality. German suppressed pistols reduced noise, but not enough. They were designed primarily for snipers and reconnaissance, not urban assassination. Shots were still recognizable. The Americans fielded the HDM pistol in .22 caliber. It was quiet, but underpowered. Winter clothing, poor shot placement, or adrenaline could all result in failure. The well rod balanced power and silence in a way no other weapon of the era achieved. It was brutally efficient. A tool meant to be forgotten. The well rod was never celebrated. It wasn't paraded or publicized. It didn't win medals or inspire posters. It existed to be used, and then erased. After the war, many were destroyed. Others disappeared into armories or private collections. Official acknowledgement came decades later, when much of its history had already faded. Yet its influence endured. Modern suppressed weapons owe much to the principles pioneered at Station 9. The idea that silence itself could be weaponized, that invisibility could be more powerful than firepower, was proven beyond doubt. The sound of nothing. The well rod didn't change the outcome of the war on its own. But it changed how the war was fought in the shadows. It turned occupied cities into dangerous places for those who believed control meant safety. It reminded collaborators that power did not always announce itself. Sometimes, death arrived without noise, without warning, without witnesses. And by the time anyone realized what had happened, the man responsible was already gone, leaving behind nothing but silence and a body on the stones.